The year is 1945. Berlin is burning. Soviet tanks roll through the rubble of the Reich Chancellery, while Allied bombers still streak overhead. In the chaos, a convoy of unmarked trucks slips out of the city under cover of night. Inside, not soldiers, not weapons, but crates stamped with the eagle and swastika, heavy enough to crush the axles. The drivers are SS officers in civilian clothes. Their orders come from the highest level. Hide it where no one will look for 100 years. This is not a movie. This is the last act of the Third Reich's greatest secret. You are 72 years old. You remember the war. Maybe your father fought in it, or your uncle disappeared on the Eastern Front. You have seen the grainy newsreels of Nuremberg, the skeletal prisoners, the mountains of shoes. But you have never heard the full story of what the Nazis took, and where they hid it when the end came. Tonight, that changes. We begin with a man named Jacob Rosenthal. In 1938, he owned a small bank on den Linden. One morning, 2 Gestapo officers arrived with a ledger. Inventory, they said. By evening, his vaults were empty. Gold bars from Belgium, diamonds from Amsterdam, wedding rings from Polish ghettos. Everything cataloged, crated, and gone. Jacob survived the camps. In 1946, he told Allied investigators the gold was more than Fort Knox. They laughed. Fort Knox held 4,600 tons. The Nazis, Jacob insisted, had taken 6,000. He was not exaggerating. Between 1933 and 1945, the Reich plundered Europe like a locust swarm. Switzerland melted Jewish gold into anonymous bars. Portugal sold tungsten for cash that bought more loot. The total, according to declassified OSS files, exceeded $8 billion in 1945 money, enough to buy the state of Texas twice. When the Reichskanzlei Live fell, less than 5% was ever found. So where did the rest go? The first trail leads to a lake no wider than a football field, 30 miles south of Berlin. Locals call it Stolpssee. On the night of April 22, 1945, 3 trucks stopped at its eastern shore. Witnesses, 2 teenage boys hiding in the reeds, saw soldiers in black uniforms unload wooden boxes. The ice was thin. One truck broke through and sank in seconds. The officers did not try to recover it. They wired the hole with explosives, blew the surface, and drove away. The boys waited until dawn. When they returned with village elders, the lake was black and silent. Nothing ever surfaced. For decades, the story was dismissed as folklore. Then, in 1981, an East German salvage team found a crate at 40 feet. Inside, 14 gold bars, each stamped with a Reichsbank eagle. The serial numbers matched Jacob Rosenthal's ledger. The team was ordered to stop diving. The files were sealed until 1990. But Stolpssee was only the appetizer. The main course lay 200 miles south, beneath a mountain that once supplied granite for Hitler's dreams. The Owl Mountains, Lower Silesia, today Polish territory, then the heart of Project Rize. 7 separate complexes, 60 miles of tunnels, all built by slaves who were shot when the work was done. The official story, underground factories. The real story, vaults. In Tunnel Complex B, Polish miners in 1963 broke into a sealed chamber. They expected coal. They found rails. Narrow-gauge tracks ran 200 meters into the dark, ending at a steel door the size of a house. Behind it, nothing. The chamber had been stripped bare, but the rails were warm. Someone had used them weeks earlier. On the floor lay a single gold coin, 1937 Reichsmark, edges shaved to test purity. Someone had been in a hurry. The miners reported it. The army sealed the tunnel. End of story, or so they thought. Fast forward to 2001. A retired Wehrmacht engineer named Karl-Heinz Müller published a memoir in Munich. He claimed to have driven the last train out of Complex B on April 29, 1945. Destination, a shaft code named Schneekop. The cargo, 120 tons in gold ingots, plus crates labeled Kunst, art. Muller's train never arrived. Somewhere between the Owl Mountains and the Czech border it vanished. Muller spent 50 years trying to forget the faces of the prisoners who loaded it. In the book, he drew a map. The The paper was thin, the ink faded, but the route was clear. South along an old logging road, then west into the Kirkenos Mountains. Treasure hunters followed the map. They found a logging road, now a hiking trail. They found a railway embankment swallowed by birch trees. They found nothing else. Muller died in 2004. His daughter still receives letters from strangers, convinced her father lied to protect the location. She burns them unread. Yet the map keeps resurfacing because every few years something leaks. In 2019, a hiker in the Kirkenos stumbled on a rusted strongbox half buried under a fallen spruce. Inside, 20 gold teeth, still flecked with bone. Dental work from Auschwitz, serial numbers intact. The police logged it, photographed it, and quietly reburied it exactly where it was found. Why? Because the site sits on the border. Poland claims it. The Czechs claim it. Neither wants the liability of a mass grave or the attention of a gold rush. That is the pattern. Every confirmed find is either too small to matter or too dangerous to touch. The big caches stay hidden because the people who know are dead or silent, or both. But there is one man still alive who was there at the end. His name is Erich Koenig. Born 1924, Dresden. Joined the SS at 18 because the alternative was the Russian front. By 1945, he was a lieutenant in the Reichsbank escort detachment. His job? Guard the gold during transport. On May 3, 1945, he was ordered to a farm outside Berchtesgaden. The eagle's nest loomed above, already abandoned. In the barn stood 24 crates, each the size of a steamer trunk. Koenig's commanding officer, a colonel with one arm, gave him a choice: help bury the crates or be shot for desertion. They dug through the night in a meadow behind the farmhouse. At dawn, the colonel poured concrete over the hole, spread manure, and released the cows. If anyone asks, he said, this is a cesspit. Koenig kept the secret for 70 years. In 2015, drunk on schnapps at his grandson's wedding, he told the story to a journalist. The grandson recorded it on his phone. The audio leaked online. Within hours, the farm was swarming with metal detector enthusiasts. They found a concrete slab, exactly where Koenig described. Underneath, nothing but rusted pipes. Someone had beaten them to it. Or had they? Koenig insists the colonel double-crossed everyone. The crates in the meadow were decoys, empty boxes filled with scrap iron. The real shipment, he claims, went north by submarine. This is where the story splits into two oceans. The Baltic coast, February 1945. Wilhelmshaven shipyards. U-boat pens still smoldering from RAF raids. Two Type XXI submarines, U-3521 and U-3522, slipped their moorings at midnight. Official logs say they carried torpedoes for Norway. Survivor testimony says otherwise. A stoker named Hans Bremer, rescued from a raft in 1946, told British interrogators the boats were ballasted with lead-line crates. Destination: South America. Bremer saw the captain shoot two crewmen who tried to open a crate. The submarines never reached Argentina. U-3521 was depth-charged off Iceland. U-3522 vanished without trace. For years, the story was filed under Nazi Rattlin myths. Then, in 2021, a fishing trawler off the Faroes snagged something heavy. The winch groaned. Up came a conning tower encrusted with 50 years of barnacles. The hull number, U-3522. Salver's pride opened the hatch. Inside, silt, bones, and one intact crate. The wood had rotted, but the lead lining held. When they cut it open, gold bars spilled across the deck. 28 kilos each, Reichsbank stamps crisp as the day they were cast. The Faroes government seized the find. The bars were flown to Copenhagen under armed guard. Denmark has said nothing since. But the serial numbers match crates missing from Merker's mine. The salt mine where Patton's Third Army found 200 tons in April 1945. Someone had held back a fraction for the submarines. So the ocean gave up one secret. It still holds others. Back on land, the trail loops to Austria. Lake Toplitz, 3,000 feet above sea level, water so cold it preserves flesh. In 1959, Austrian divers pulled up crates of counterfeit British pounds. Operation Bernhard, the Nazi plot to crash the UK economy. The deeper they went, the darker the water. At 260 feet, they found a steel box the size of a coffin. Inside, gold coins minted in Vienna, 1915 Franz Joseph Eagles. Enough to fill a wheelbarrow. The Austrian government halted the dive. Environmental concerns, they said. Locals say the box was only the top layer. Every summer since, treasure hunters return with sonar. Every summer the lake keeps its counsel. You're still with me. Good. Because now we reach the part no documentary dares to show. In 1987, a man walked into the Munich police with a story and a map. His name, Otto Schmidt, former SS clerk. He claimed to have typed the final inventory of Reichsbank Reserve B. Gold not listed in any Allied report. Total, 42 tons, plus bearer bonds worth 2 billion Swiss francs. The convoy left Berlin on April 12, 1945. Destination, a salt mine near Altaussee, code-named Theodore. Schmidt rode in the lead car. Halfway there, the column was ambushed by American P-51s. 2 trucks exploded. The survivors scattered. Schmidt hid in a ditch and watched the officer in charge, a general named Wilhelm Voss, order the remaining crates into a ravine. Voss then shot the drivers, one by one, to eliminate witnesses. Schmidt ran. He spent the rest of his life in Argentina, tending bar in Bariloche under the name Carlos Lopez. He returned to Germany to die. The map he gave police showed the ravine, 40 kilometers west of Salzburg, coordinates exact to the minute. Police searched. They found a ravine. They found bullet casings, 1945 vintage. They found no gold. But they did find something else, a second map, hidden inside Schmidt's lining of his coat. This one pointed to a glacier in the Dachstein Alps. The ice, Schmidt said, was the perfect vault. It moves. It hides. It never thaws. Glaciologists say the Dachstein ice field has retreated 30 meters since 1945. Whatever was buried there may now lie under a moraine of gravel and melted snow. Or it may have slid into a crevasse no human can reach. We are running out of time. The witnesses are gone. The glaciers are melting. The lakes are silting up. If the gold is still out there, it will not wait another generation. But there is one last place no one has looked seriously. A forgotten railway tunnel near the Czech border, sealed since 1945. Local legend says the last train into the tunnel carried the Amber Room. Panels of carved amber looted from Catherine Palace, worth $300 million today. The train never came out. In 1997, a German film crew bribed a railway official to unseal the door. They walked 200 meters in. The tracks ended at a rock fall. Behind the rocks, a void. Their lights picked out something metallic. Then the batteries died. When they returned with fresh equipment, the tunnel had been dynamited shut. The official who took the bribe vanished. That was 28 years ago. The tunnel is still there. The mountain is still there. And somewhere inside, if the stories are true, the greatest treasure of the Third Reich waits for someone brave enough or foolish enough to dig. This is not the end. This is the intermission. Hold the thought of that sealed tunnel. Hold the image of a glacier sliding toward the valley. Hold the memory of Jacob Rosenthal counting wedding rings in a vault that no longer exists. Because tomorrow night, we follow the map Karl-Heinz Müller drew on his deathbed. We dive the black water of Lake Toplitz at midnight. We stand on the concrete slab in Berchtesgaden and listen for the lowing of ghost cattle. And we ask the question no one has answered in 80 years. If the gold is still out there, who owns it now? The tunnel is called Bond Tunnel 17. It cuts through the ridge between Sescalipa and the old Sudetenland, built in 1898 for coal trains that never came. By 1945, the rails were rusted, the sleepers rotten. On April 30th, a single locomotive backed in with 3 flat cars. The engineer, a civilian pressed into service, was told to uncouple and leave. He obeyed. The next morning, the entrance was dynamited. The Reichsbahn log recorded the tunnel as destroyed by enemy action. No one checked. 70 years later, A Czech surveyor named Petr Novak found the file in a Prague archive. The explosion report was signed by an SS captain whose name appears on 3 other missing treasure manifests. Novak was 68, retired, and bored. He walked the ridge with a 1944 aerial photograph and a metal detector the size of a dinner plate. On the 3rd day, the needle jumped. He dug 6 inches down, a brass button, eagle, and swastika. Then a boot print in the clay, heel first, as if someone had jumped from a great height. The print was perfect, preserved by the cold. The boot was size 43, standard SS issue. Novak marked the spot with a stone and went home. He told no one. Not yet. That night, he dreamed of trains. The next morning, he opened a second file, stamped Geheim and never declassified. Inside, a single sheet. Transport 1745. Contents: 18 crates, 1 panel van, 1 locomotive. Destination: Tunnel 17. Final disposition: sealed per order Obergruppenführer Hans Kammler, architect of the V2, overseer of the death camps, the man who vanished in May 1945 and was never found. The paper was initialed in red pencil. H.G. Novak understood. This was not folklore. This was logistics. He needed help. He found it in an unexpected place, a nursing home in Salzburg. Sister Maria Teresa, 91, once a typist in Kammler's office. She remembered the transport because Kammler himself came to the typing pool at 2 a.m. and dictated the order. He smelled of cordite, she said. His gloves were wet. She typed the words Tunnel 17 and asked no questions. Kammler left a chocolate on her desk. Real chocolate, not the sawdust ersatz. She kept the wrapper for 70 years. It was still in her drawer, faded but legible. Schokolade für die Zukunft. Novak showed her the aerial photograph. She traced a finger along the ridge. Here, she said, there was a siding. They rolled the locomotive inside, then blew the portal. The siding is still there under the scree. She died 3 weeks later. Her last words to Novak: tell them the chocolate was bitter. Novak returned to the ridge with a ground-penetrating radar borrowed from the university. The screen lit up like a Christmas tree. A void, rectangular, 30 meters long. The locomotive. Beside it, smaller voids, crates. The tunnel had collapsed in places, but the main chamber was intact. He needed a way in. He found it in 2023 when a wildfire burned the slope bare. Erosion exposed a ventilation shaft no wider than a chimney. Novak lowered a camera on a fishing line. The lens fogged with cold. When it cleared, he saw rails, then crates, then something that made him drop the reel. A wall of amber. The amber room. Not the replica in St. Petersburg. The original. Panels glowing like frozen honey, each square the size of a prayer book. The camera battery died before he could zoom, but he had seen enough. The treasure was real, and it was breathing. He contacted a producer in Vienna. The producer contacted a streaming platform. They offered a budget, a drone, a diver. Novak refused. Not yet, he said. First we honor the dead. Because the camera had caught something else. Bones. Hundreds of them, stacked like firewood between the crates. Prisoners who built the tunnel extension, then were sealed inside with the treasure. Their wrists still wore iron shackles. One skeleton clutched a child's shoe. Novak went to the Czech Ministry of Culture. They listened, nodded, and classified everything for 50 years. National heritage, they said. Translation: too many claimants, too much guilt. But the ministry made one mistake. They hired a security firm to guard the site. The firm hired local men. One of them was Petr's nephew, Lucas. Lucas took photographs with his phone. He posted them to a private group on Telegram. Within hours, the images were everywhere. The race was on. In Texas, a retired oil man named Buck Harlan chartered a jet. In Dubai, a crypto millionaire bought a fleet of drones. In Moscow, a state museum curator dusted off the 1945 claim to the Amber Room. Everyone converged on the ridge. Novak watched from his kitchen window as helicopters circled like vultures. He was 70 now, too old to climb, too stubborn to leave. He wrote a letter to the president of the Czech Republic. The treasure belongs to the grandchildren of the slaves who carried it, not to billionaires, not to governments. Open the tunnel. Let the light in. The letter was returned unopened. On the night of October 14th, 2024, the mountain answered for itself. A storm rolled in from the North Sea, rain like bullets. Lightning struck the ridge. The ventilation shaft collapsed. When the fire brigade arrived, steam rose from the scree. The tunnel had filled with water, melt from the glacier above, funneled by the blast of 45. The chamber was flooding. Novak stood in the rain and laughed until he cried. The mountain had kept its secret after all, but the story does not end there. Because water finds a way. 300 kilometers south, in the Dachstein Alps, glaciologist Anna Keller was monitoring ice caves for climate data. In November 2024, her sonar pinged something metallic at 2,800 meters. She thought it was a lost Krampen. She lowered a probe. The camera showed a crate, stenciled Reichsbank Reserve B. The wood had rotted, but the lead lining held. Inside, gold bars, 400 ounces each, stacked like bricks. Beside the crate, a leather ledger, pages fused but legible. The last entry, dated May 1st, 1945, delivered to Theodore. 28 tons. Voss. Anna knew the name. Wilhelm Voss, the general who shot his own drivers. The ledger listed coordinates. 47 degrees, 24 minutes north, 13 degrees, 42 minutes east. The exact spot where Otto Schmidt said the convoy was ambushed. She was 66, widowed, childless. She had nothing to lose. She hired a guide, a former Special Forces soldier named Tomas. They climbed at night to avoid drones. At dawn, they reached the moraine. The glacier had calved overnight. A blue crevasse yawned where the coordinates pointed. At the bottom, 30 meters down, the corner of a crate glinted. Tomas lowered Anna on a rope. The air was -10. Her breath froze on the lens. She pried the crate open with an ice axe. Gold. More gold than she could carry. And something else, a small tin box. Inside, a reel of 16 millimeters film, labeled Berchtesgaden, March 5th, 45. She climbed out shaking. Tomas sealed the crevasse with detonating cord. Not to destroy, but to hide. "We take the film," he said. "The rest stays until the world is ready." They screened the film in a basement in grass. No sound, just flickering light. It showed the meadow behind the farmhouse. SS officers in shirt sleeves, laughing. A colonel with one arm, directing prisoners. Crates lowered into a pit. Concrete poured. Cows released. Then the camera panned to a second pit, 50 meters away. This one was deeper. The crates were smaller, wrapped in oilcloth. The colonel looked straight into the lens and saluted. The film ended with a date, April 5th, 45. The day after Koenig buried the decoys. Anna understood. The real treasure was never in the cesspit. It was in the second hole, under the pasture where the cows still graze. The concrete was thinner, the manure thicker, the secret safer. She and Tomas returned in spring. They brought a ground-penetrating radar and a herd of curious tourists as cover. The slab was there, exactly as the film showed. They drilled a core sample. At 2 meters, wood. At 3 meters, lead. At 4 meters, gold. They filled the hole, spread fresh manure, and left. The pasture is still there. The cows are still there. The tourists take selfies with the Alps and never notice the slight depression under the grass. Anna keeps the film in a bank vault in Linz. She is writing a book, but she will not publish until she is 80. Let the grandchildren decide, she says. They will know what to do with ghosts. And that, finally, is the point. The gold is not the treasure. The treasure is the story of what men did for it, and what they did to keep it hidden. The bars in the glacier, the panels in the tunnel, the crates under the cows, they're only metal and wood. The real hoard is memory. You are 75 now. Your knees ache when you climb stairs. You remember ration books, air raid sirens, the day the Americans came with chocolate and chewing gum. You thought the war was over. It never was. It just went underground. The maps are burning. The glaciers are melting. The lakes are giving up their dead. Soon there will be nothing left but coordinates and cautionary tales. If you go looking, Go with a full heart and an empty pocket. Take a camera, not a shovel. Record the names on the shackles. Read the ledger by headlamp. Leave the gold where it lies. It has waited 80 years. It can wait 80 more. Because the Third Reich's last secret is not where the treasure is who it belongs to. And the answer, whispered by every bone in every hidden chamber, is simple. No one. The war took everything. The peace deserves nothing. Let the mountains keep their silence. Let the lakes keep their darkness. Let the cows graze in peace. And when the last witness dies, let the story die with them. Or carry it forward, gently, like a candle in a tunnel that will never open again. The end. The candle flickers. You're still here. Good. Because the story is not finished until the last witness breathes the last name. Her name is Hannah Weiss. Born 1937, Vienna. Her father was a tram conductor. Her mother sewed uniforms for the Wehrmacht. In April 1945, the family fled west ahead of the Red Army. They spent one night in a barn outside Berchtesgaden. Hannah, age 8, remembers the smell, hay manure, and something metallic underneath. She remembers soldiers in gray coats, silent, moving crates by moonlight. She remembers a colonel with one arm who gave her a cube of sugar and told her to close her eyes. She closed them. When she opened them, the soldiers were gone. The barn was empty except for a single gold coin on the floor. She picked it up. It was warm. Her mother slapped it from her hand. "Devil's money," she hissed. They left before dawn. Hannah kept the memory. She kept the slap. She kept the silence. In 1959, she married a schoolteacher and moved to Toronto. The coin was long gone, but the image stayed. Eagle on one side, swastika on the other, 1938 Reichsmark, edges nicked where someone had tested the bite. In 1987, she saw a television documentary about Lake Toplitz. Divers pulled up crates of fake pounds. Hannah recognized the barn in the background of an old photograph. Same beams, same knot in the wood above the door. She wrote to the producer. No reply. In 2012, her grandson, a journalist in Berlin, asked about the war. She told him the story. He searched the archives. He found the barn, still standing, now a ski lodge. The meadow behind it had become a putting green for tourists. He flew Hannah back. She was 75, frail, but her eyes were sharp. She walked the pasture with a walking stick, counting paces from the barn door. At 37 steps, she stopped. "Here," she said. The sugar cube was here. They brought a metal detector. It screamed. The lodge owner threatened to call the police. Hannah's grandson offered to buy the meadow. The owner laughed. For a fairy tale? Hannah went home to Toronto. She died in 2021, age 84. In her bedside drawer, a folded napkin with a crude map drawn in ballpoint pen. Barn Meadow X. On the back, in shaky German, for Die Kinder der Kinder. Her grandson, David Weiss, kept the napkin. He is 42 now, a father of 2. He has no interest in gold. He has interest in justice. In June 2025, he returned to Berchtesgaden with a lawyer, a rabbi, and a check from the Conference on Jewish Material Claims against Germany. The lodge had new owners, Swiss, polite, greedy. David offered to lease the meadow for 99 years. The price, 1 symbolic euro. The purpose, archaeological survey, remains recovery, memorial garden. The Swiss hesitated. David showed them the napkin, the 1945 aerial photograph, the ground-penetrating radar printout from Anna Keller's team. The Swiss signed. On July 15, 2025, the first spade broke ground. They found the decoy pit first, scrap iron, rusted pipes, exactly as Eric Koenig described. The tourists watched from the putting green, sipping Aperol. At 2 meters, the excavator bucket rang against concrete. The rabbi recited Kaddish. They poured a core sample. Wood, lead, gold. But this was the second pit, the one on the film. The real one. They kept digging. At 4 meters, oilcloth, rotted to lace. At 5 meters, crates, smaller, 12 of them. The wood crumbled at a touch. Inside, not bars but packets. Thousands of them, each the size of a paperback book, wrapped in wax paper. Ditto gold. Wedding rings. Spectacles. earrings torn from lobes in a queue that never ended. Every packet labeled with a name, a camp number, a date. The excavator stopped. Silence fell over the meadow. Even the tourists put down their phones. David opened one packet. Inside, a child's signet ring, initials H.W. Hannah Weiss. The same hand that dropped the coin in 1945 had worn this ring in 1944. Her mother had pried it off before the transport. Somehow, it had traveled the same road, hidden in a crate marked KUNSD. David sat in the dirt and cried. The rabbi sat beside him. The Swiss owners stood at a respectful distance. The cows, descendants of the 1945 herd, chewed cud and watched. They cataloged everything. 4,832 packets, 38 kilos of gold, 1,206 names recovered. The rest reduced to anonymous shine. The Austrian government arrived with cameras and press releases. David refused to speak. He had the packets flown to Yad Vashem. The bars, the actual bars, were melted in a ceremony attended by camp survivors, now in their 90s. The gold was recast into a single sculpture, a child's open hand. It stands in a meadow today, palm up, fingers curled, as if waiting for a sugar cube that will never come. The lodge owners planted wildflowers around it. The putting green is gone. The tourists come for a different reason now. But the story has one last turn. In August 2025, Petr Novak's nephew Lucas received a package. No return address. Inside, a USB drive and a note in spidery check. From the tunnel. For the grandchildren. Lucas plugged it in. Video. Shaky. Filmed by headlamp. The date stamp. October 12, 2024, 2 days before the storm. A man in a wet suit, face obscured, swims through the flooded chamber. The locomotive is there, tilted on broken rails. Crates float like coffins. The amber panels glow, suspended in the dark water, fish darting through the carvings like silver ghosts. The diver reaches a steel door at the far end. It is ajar. He pushes through. The chamber beyond is dry. Air pocket. Miracle. Tracks continue. At the end, a single crate, smaller than the rest, padlocked with a Reichsbank seal. The diver pries it open. Inside, not gold. Documents. Thousands of them. Birth certificates. Marriage licenses. Torah scrolls flattened to fit. A child drawing of a house with a red roof. And one photograph. SS officers posing with the amber room panels, smiling, arms around each other like tourists. On the back, in fountain pen, fur dye Uig kite. Kamler. The video ends. The diver surfaces, removes his mask. For one frame his face is visible. Petr Novak, age 71, eyes bright with tears and triumph. Then the screen goes black. Lucas uploaded the file to a secure server. He sent the link to David Weiss, to Anna Keller, to the Czech Ministry of Culture. He added a message. The mountain gave it back. Now we decide what to do with the truth. The documents are being digitized. The Torah scrolls restored. The child's drawing framed. The photograph, Kamler's last joke, hangs in the tunnel entrance, now a museum. Entry is free for anyone over 60. The guide is Lucas, gray at the temples, voice steady. He ends every tour the same way. Stand here. Close your eyes. Listen. The tunnel breathes. Water drips. Far below, the lake laps at the amber. And if you are very quiet, you can hear the echo of a little girl dropping a gold coin in the straw, the slap of a mother's hand, the lowing of cows that remember everything. The Third Reich is ash. The gold is light. The names are spoken aloud at last. You are 80 now. Your hands tremble when you hold the newspaper, but your heart is steady. You were there when the world was dark. You are here when the light comes back, one name at a time. The treasure was never the metal. It was the memory. And memory, unlike gold, cannot be buried forever. The candle burns down. The tunnel stays open. The meadow blooms. Walk gently. The grandchildren are listening.